The names of the people whose names will be on the third ballot, fourth ballot, boy, the next ballot. Susan Beaver, Richard Bott, and Catherine Faith McLean. And I want to give our thanks to Tessa Blakey Whitecloud for the gifts that she has offered. Please join me in a moment of prayer. Loving God, be with us in this place as we do the difficult work of discernment, having to make choices between these wonderful servants. We ask that you bring comfort and joy and new directions to all those whose names are not moving forward. We ask that your love encircle all of them and all of those making the decisions this morning. Amen.
Thank you. We have time now for some speak outs. So there are 3 possible microphones you might move to on the floor if you have 1 minute worth of important things that you feel the court needs to hear. And please be attentive to those who might be making their way there with less speed. We've got time for only 4. We've got time for 4. So I'm just going to go in the order of the microphones. Microphone 1.
Cynthia O'Connell, Toronto Conference. I'm not going to take a minute. I'm just going to say this because it needs to be said. Android is better than Apple, so deal with it.
All right. Microphone 2.
Nicole Baudry, Montréal et Ottawa. Je veux juste dire à tous mes amis francophones, coast to coast to coast to coast, donnez-nous vos noms pour qu'on puisse vous contacter, pas pour vous donner des tâches, mais pour entretenir des bonnes conversations et des bonnes relations. Vous pouvez venir à la table 37, donnez-nous vos noms. Vous pouvez les donner à Éric Hébert ou à d'autres francophones, puis on va rester en contact avec vous toujours.
Merci. Microphone 3.
Thank you. My name is Andrea Allen, and I belong to a phenomenal organization that's called the Young Clergy Women International. Hopefully you have seen on your tables a card that looks like this. If you are a young clergywoman, which is defined as somebody who is ordained or diaconal and under the age of 40, I encourage you to please, I encourage you to please go to the website here, youngclergywomen.org. This is an organization across all of the world that encompasses over 50 denominations of young clergy women who simply live to equip, collaborate, and transform one another in our ministries, and therefore we are transforming our congregations. Now, a number of you do not qualify as young clergy women, unfortunately, but you are able to give your money to support.
All right. We've got microphone 1, and then I'm going to ask those of you still standing at the microphones, we're going to have time for an extra one because not everyone has taken a full minute. If you have spoken at a microphone already and there's somebody standing in line behind you who hasn't, search your heart. Microphone 1.
Jim Weber-Cook, Maritime Conference. Raise the money you need to do the work you want without compromising your values. Sustain yourself amidst heavy demands and the urgency you feel about making a difference in this world. Be transformed in order to be about making a difference, learning about social permaculture, tools for community organizing and spirit. Imagine youth coming together from different communities and cultures to learn about and engage in social justice, environmental issues, culture, gender, race, and injustice. Reclaim what our ancestors knew about death care in our communities and how to support each other in that difficult journey. All of this is possible thanks to Tatamagouche Centre in Tatamagouche, Nova Scotia. Fundraising for nonprofits, Courage to Lead Retreat, Earth Activist Training, Social Justice Youth Camp, and Home Funeral Practicum. These exciting upcoming programs at Tadamagush Centre embody the centre's mission to provide space.
Okay. And I'm going to call on microphone 1 for our last speak out.
I just wanted to make everyone aware that last night I was able to represent us at the vigil on the Danforth, and it was a very powerful experience as we sang some hymns of faith and songs in Arabic, in Hebrew, in English, and as we went from place to place where the shooting had happened, people sitting in restaurants were singing with us, and tears were just streaming down their face. Young children were there with signs that said, "Love is stronger than fear." And I just wanted you to know that the ministers in that community appreciated our prayers and support.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, friends, we are going to vote on the next ballot for moderator. So this is our 4th ballot. We have 3 names, which are going to be up on the screen in just a moment, with, again, potentially a new number next to them. So make sure you're clear about the number for the person you want to vote for. We've got 6 minutes for prayerful discernment. Thank you. So you have your clickers out. The 3 names with their corresponding clicker numbers are before you. Please vote now. Thank you. Friends, now we get to do rest our clicker fingers for a little bit and do some more listening on some themes that we haven't yet had a listening session on. So we've got Bob Fillier and Jay Oldson, sorry. I guess an old son grows up to be an old man, so give it a few years. Who are going to be presenting to us on some of the proposals under the theme Identity and Vision.
Guess which one's Jay and which one's Bob? That's our point. Sisters and brothers, God is with you. Also with you. Oh yeah, I'm so not convinced. God is with you. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Jay Olson. I'm a minister member of British Columbia Conference, Kinatsu Yuchat Duasak, which means that born and raised in British Columbia and an adoptee of the Tlingit people of Sitka, Alaska. My clan is Kiksati Raven Frog, and the name given to me at my adoption is Kinatsu. Growing up with the name Jay meant people were always speculating on my identity. Old man. Right. And so I'm here to say I identify as she, her, and me.
Bonjour Église, Madame Moderatrice, je m'appelle Bob Fillier et je suis de la Colombie-Britannique. Et pour moi, la préférence est lui. Good afternoon, or still good morning, church. I'm Bob Fillier. I'm from British Columbia Conference, and I identify with him and his, or just plain Bob.
It's our task today to help open up this identity and vision listening time. When I was on sabbatical, I was introduced to this spectacular gift of the writing of Richard Wagamese. And if you don't have a copy of his book, Embers, believe me, you will carry it with you, Bible in one hand, embers in the other. I think he does a beautiful job in his writing of welcoming us into this conversation. In this piece, he's writing a conversation between himself and an old woman, and he asks this: when are things going to get easier? Old woman: they already are. Me: doesn't feel like it. I keep waiting for Creator to step in. Old woman: she already has. She already will. She always will. Keep faith burning in your heart. Me: I have. I've been waiting for things to change. Old woman: faith isn't about waiting for things to change. Faith is the constant effort to keep pushing through. And me asks, what's on the other side? And old woman answers, you. Friends, it's easy for many of us, at least for somebody like me and the cultures and traditions in which I grew up, to be trained in problem solving. So the easiest things and the natural things for me to reach for are structure. You know, what about that can we change that'll make things better? Or what about this piece over here? Or how do we fix that? It is coming clear throughout our conversations this week and in the contemplations of BC Conference through proposals 3 and 5 that we know in our hearts that we need to always be clear as much as we can about who we are. In my work in interim ministry, that's the first question I ask a congregation or a community of faith. Who are you called to be at this point in time? Who is God calling you to be? And once we have clarity about that, the aha, then we get to the doing and the structural pieces. So I would like to offer up to you BC03, Leading on Purpose, and simply say about that we are where we are, BC Conference noted, which means we are in the structural questions. And this proposal is meant to draw us together in that conscious reminder and a conscious commitment to keep the question of who we are called to be deeply and intimately connected to the problem solving that we're about as well. And so I'm not going to read that proposal to you. It's in front of you. But the values, I hope, are apparent in that, and also the anxieties and the fears. We have been talking on the West Coast about the context of the anxiety around diminished numbers, and therefore why it's important to stay in touch with who we are called to be, and to keep that conversation in the structures at all times. And Bob is going to talk a bit, or provide invitation for you to consider BC05.
Thanks, Jay. Moderator, my goal is to try and provide some framework to hold all of this in a container. So I'm going to start with a little bit of Bible. My apologies to my homiletics and Bible professors because it's going to be really, really quick. So if you look at the first 4 chapters of Luke, you notice some things start to emerge. The first chapter is really all about getting ready for the birthing process. The second chapter is about what happens in those early years. The third chapter is about John the Baptist preparing for the way of Jesus and acknowledging the rich history of Jesus' lineage. And then we get to chapter 4, which is where I like to jump in. Jesus is tested in the wilderness for 40 days, a long time. And then he goes home, and the first thing he does is he proclaims his purpose, or defines the vision for his ministry, which doesn't really work so well for him. But he says, this is what I'm going to do, folks. I'm here to proclaim good news to the poor, freedom to the prisoner, sight to the blind, and set the oppressed free, and declare a year of Yahweh's favor. We all know his home community didn't like that too much, which is okay, because that's part of the biblical story, sometimes you get rejected. But then we get to the next piece where I really love to jump in, because what Jesus does is he gets on with doing ministry. But it's always linked back to that vision and mission and purpose. Even to the point where I think the gospel writer really wants us to understand that. So as we hear the rest of the story and the rest of the biblical witness, we filter it through that lens of vision and purpose, so that we understand who Jesus is, what he's doing, and why he's doing it. I think that theological understanding then underpins the idea that vision and purpose can animate, inspire, transform, and propel people as individuals and communities into deeper lives of discipleship and faithful witness wherever they find themselves planted, whether that's with one other disciple or 500 other disciples. That piece stays true. But that piece, figuring that out, that takes time. And sometimes, as Thoreau once is quoted as saying, it's not enough to be busy. So are the ants. The question is, what are we busy about? I'd push that a little further and say, why are we busy about it in the first place? And that's part of the container we're hoping holds these two proposals. A metaphor I was given this week was about building a construction site. It's a picture of a steel building, and to some degrees, this is where we're at. We've decided there are some parameters to what we're going to be going towards in the future. We know its shape. We have some sense of what that's going to look like, but we haven't yet decided what the whole piece is going to look like. We still have time to discern our purpose and vision and allow that to shape what we do with the rest of our structure. We still have time to ask questions like, do we want commercial activity on the first floor? Or is it more about social innovation and joining together with other partners? Do we want 50% of our space to be affordable housing? Do we want everyone in their own cubicle with walls and doors and windows? Or do we want some kind of open space, free-flowing, let the spirit move kind of model? Where do we want the stairs? Where do we want the doors? How is information going to move around this building? Where will the spirit be? What kind of coating are we going to put on the windows that shape not only how we look out and see the world, but how the world looks in and sees us? That's the work of vision and purpose and identity. And that's the work that we're hoping in the next triennium we will name as, if not the most important, that would be my bias, at least one of the most important things that we can do together as church. Who are we? What are we about? And then as that shapes our ministry plan and our priorities, then how are we going to be about it within this new building that we're in the process of finishing the design plans for? And so we're proposing a way forward. And set a number one priority to engage in this conversation across the denomination and include as many voices as possible. I recognize there's a typo in the report. There are many committees that might be involved. Let's include them as part of the body, not just as a committee out there, so that we can have a truly rich and innovative, deep and faithful conversation. And yes, we also acknowledge funding will be needed. That's a reality. if you're going to do this kind of work well, you can't do it without the resources. And lastly, we're encouraging us as church to keep it high level, keep it simple, keep it focused, but always about who we are as a denomination. Not how is this going to play out right here in my backyard, but as a body, as the body of Christ that identifies itself in all of its diversity as the United Church of Canada. And then, after we've done that really hard work and we've gotten to the other side and we realize that we're the ones standing there, have courage and dare hope once again to allow that vision to shape us and mold us.
Friends, this is listening time, and it's a short time, and I fear we may have used up too much of it already, but there are a couple of minutes. Does anybody have anything to offer to this body, something you heard, something you're wondering about, something you need clarification on these two proposals?
If you do have questions for clarification, then please move to one of the floor mics. Microphone 2.
Stephen Sparks, Alberta Northwest Conference, Madam Moderator. One of the questions that I have, would the discussion include looking at the doctrines of the church? The reason I ask that is a lot of the theological discussion that we often have has been, at best, very conflictual within the church. You know, understanding around atonement, the parousia, the second coming, for those who don't know what parousia is, to other aspects about the church and church life. I'm wondering, would that be part of the discussion?
I would imagine that's up to those in the conversation, and however it is, wherever this goes, if this gets furthered on, that would be part of figuring out the kinds of conversations, the kinds of questions that need to be asked. We did not, in British Columbia, include that language. We were thinking more big picture. Okay. Who is God calling us to be? And I can't imagine that wouldn't include some of those conversations.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing anybody else at or heading towards a microphone, so thank you very much for that very rich presentation. And
Gunesh Chish.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Microphone 2.
Elaine Jacobs, ANCC. I think this is a beautiful, wonderful conversation to have. But we are a church, and somehow we never discuss the Spirit. We never get down to basics. It's arguable whether you can be a Christian without developing your gifts of intuition, because you can't follow Christ if you haven't developed them. I was always saying, he hasn't written that on any walls lately. You need to develop the gifts of the Spirit, your intuition, your gifts of healing. How do you help your brother if you can't heal him? It's a part of loving him. The United Church has always been afraid of developing gifts of the Spirit. But to me, it's crucial. How do we say we're a church without following that directive? I think that needs to be a part of this conversation. And it will help to make a place for me and my beautiful elder here who believe in following the gifts of the Spirit.
Thank you. Thank you. Miigwech. All right. I'm going to invite the General Secretary to share with us the results of the fourth ballot.
We now have the results of the fourth ballot. The candidates who will be moving forward to the fifth ballot are Susan Beaver and Richard Bott. I want to thank Catherine Faith McLean for the gifts that she has offered to the church, and to ask you to join me for a moment in prayer. Beloved God, we seek to be your community, to do your work in the world. We thank you for all those who are called to leadership in that work. We're grateful for all those who've offered themselves in your service, and we're willing to take on the challenges and all the work of being moderator. We give thanks for all the gifts offered. We ask that your love encircle each person who has come forward to stand for moderator, and all of those present who are making the difficult decisions today. Amen.
All right, we have a video. Am I right? I'm right.
I like my neighborhood, and I think you would like my neighborhood. It's a little dusty, but you might like it.
Welcome to East Gwillimbury. It really is beautiful here. Lots of farms, rolling hills, trees, and wide open spaces. East Gwillimbury is also seeing an unprecedented level of population growth. What was once a primarily rural area is quickly becoming peppered with new housing developments. So some people within the United Church of Canada saw an opportunity to explore a new approach to being church. Living Waters Presbytery gathered a steering committee together, and the Living Presence Ministry was born. It is a unique approach to mission, nurturing a new community ministry while simultaneously revitalizing the existing congregations in the area. This both-and approach means we are working to find new ways of connecting with those who are not drawn to traditional church, and helping the local congregations become as attractive and inviting as possible for new residents who might be looking for a spiritual home. A house was purchased in one of the new subdivisions, and that is the base for our ministry. It's also where my family and I live. We call it the Borough.
I'm going to my garage because I have no yard.
That's Isaiah. My name is Brianne, and I'm Isaiah's mama. I'm also the community minister with the Living Presence Ministry. The Borough is a very busy place. We host monthly community potluck dinners, a Harry Potter group where kids from a variety of backgrounds use the book series as a common text to talk about how to live justly and compassionately in the world. We offer alternative liturgies, exploring ways to use popular music as hymnody, and lower barriers for people in the community to experience worship. I offer spiritual care, I advocate on behalf of new residents to the town and school board, and I host a weekly podcast aimed at commuters which explores the intersection of faith and the secular through a progressive Christian lens. But mostly, this ministry is a ministry of presence. My role is to be in and with the community in whatever ways are needed. That is our starting point. And sometimes it means offering a safe space for people of different faith backgrounds to discuss deep and profound spiritual questions and truths. We are enmeshed within the community and strive to serve them with an unexpected hospitality and a Christ-inspired love. So feel free to come and visit us sometime. Isaiah and I would love to see you.
Want to see a little corner at my house? That's my house. And so, I hope you have a great day. Bye.
All right, friends, this is our final ballot, our 5th ballot for moderator. We have 2 names before us. You see the names and the corresponding clicker numbers on the screen. We have 6 minutes for our prayerful listening for the Spirit, discernment. Begin now. Friends, please get your clickers ready. And if we could have the slide with the names and their corresponding numbers. Friends, please vote now. Give them time, folks. When everybody's voting at the same time, sometimes it takes a little while. You'll notice the numbers at the top of the screen. Thank you. I'm now going to invite up Dan Hayward and Gail Allen to walk us through the two remaining proposals that are under the theme Identity and Vision. And John Young as well, I see.
Bonjour. I'm Dan Hayward, Chair of the Theology and Interchurch Interfaith Committee. Je veux présenter la proposition GC43 au sujet de l'adhésion, the report on membership, which is GCE17. And we have slides for this, and the tech team is trusting me to advance my own slides. So we'll see if the next thing I bring up is a slide or a cat video. It could be one of the two. So the background to this proposal. We have had a, membership and its accompanying issues is not a new problem in the life of the church. This goes back to the very first Christian communities. Membership was much discussed at the time of the Union of Churches in 1925. You can see on the slide that we have had previous proposals and remits trying to clear up our understanding of membership and the relationship between baptism and membership. And of course, in recent years, one of the key issues has been the status of adherence. And there will be lots of commissioners here who know the feeling when you have a congregational meeting which has to vote on something important, and all kinds of people suddenly discover that they are not full members and are only adherents and are not allowed to vote on that important issue. And much hurt results, and a lot of words get exchanged about, I've been going to this church for X number of years and have contributed X amount of money. We have attempted to rectify this with the remit on governing bodies being full members being able to vote to allow adherents to vote on matters on which they previously could not. We are trying to discern how to understand and apply the concept of membership in our context of 2018. At the 42nd General Council in Corner Brook, the Theology and Interchurch Interfaith Committee presented a report on membership, and that General Council directed us to study the meaning of membership, including the relationship of baptism and membership, and bring to this General Council, the 43rd, a recommendation of membership for the church as a result of that study. Subsequent to the 42nd General Council, last year we distributed a study document which presented two models of membership and asked communities of faith to study those models and supply feedback to us. You will see in the report, in the workbook accompanying this proposal, that the results were inconclusive. We will look again at those models in a moment, but the church provided no clear direction whether it preferred Model 1, which is basically the current model of membership, slightly amended, because the church is reformed and always reforming, and a new model of membership which differs radically in some areas. On a scale of 1 to 7, the church came out as 3.5. So where do we go from here? We are asking commissioners to prayerfully discern this in your discussion time so that the committee can then develop further a model of membership, which may be the current model and reforming it. It might be the new model or some variant, depending on how the discussion goes in the next while. We want the 43rd General Council to offer us guidance as to which option for membership will best serve the church. And you will hear back from us as based on how you direct us to act. Because the Theology and Interchurch Interfaith Committee is a committee of the General Council, unlike some other committees you've heard from, which are permanent committees of the General Council Executive, we are a committee which reports directly to you as commissioners of the General Council. So quickly, what are the two models that we have been looking at? These will be familiar to you if you were a commissioner to the 42nd General Council, and of course from the accompanying material and the online webinar. Our current model we are calling Model 1. This is the one which has been in effect since church union and is based in a era when everyone in the community was more or less Christian, and everyone went to the United Church in your community. But of course, the assumptions underlying this model have changed. And one key thing that has changed is less commitment to formal membership in our society. People aren't joiners the way they were in my parents' generation when, my parents belonged to, in the 1950s, to a bowling league. Dad came back from Korea and would have joined the Royal Canadian Legion if Korean veterans had been accepted at that time. He was a member of the Naval Association or the Navy League. People just joined things, which is still something which may hold in and is trying to hold on in small-town Canada, but people just don't join the way they used to. And this is, as I said, this is not just true of churches, but sports leagues, civic organizations, service clubs, fraternal organizations and sororities, and so on. The famous title of Robert Putnam's book on this is Bowling Alone, that people are not joiners. So the underlying both models is a set of assumptions about how these models of membership relate to the surrounding culture. Do we adapt to people not being joiners now, which would be the assumption underlying Model 2? Or do we strive to be as countercultural as we can now that observant Christians are a minority in Canadian society? You know that people who call themselves Christians in the last census were 67% of the people in Canada. Of course, people who actually observe and participate in a Christian community are a much smaller percentage. And in parts of the country, for instance, in British Columbia, 44% of people in the census say that they have no religion at all. Do we strive hard to be a faithful remnant, a minority, and hold on to a model of membership which really does set us apart and is rooted in baptism, membership in the universal body of Christ? The way our current model of membership works is that people are baptized, whether as an infant or an adult. That is the entry into membership. We have had a number of remits trying to clean up the ambiguity in the basis of union about whether children who are baptized are full members. We have settled on an interpretation, for better or worse, that baptized children must take a profession of faith at a later stage in order to become a full member with the privileges and responsibilities of full membership. Model 2 is a different idea of membership, and it is based on participation in the local community of faith. Membership is less about the commitment made once or twice in baptism and profession of faith, and more about encouraging people to continue to move along a spectrum of discipleship. It focuses first on belonging to an extremely loud community of faith, moving then to affirming...
Can't hear you.
Oops. Moving then to affirming beliefs. Am I still off here?
Bunch of...
So we may be switching to a new microphone and a new model of membership, or back eventually to the previous microphone and our current, if amended, model of membership. So belonging, behavior, and belief. Folks who have read the work of scholars of religion like Diana Butler-Bass will be familiar with this way of looking at how a new generation enters the church, and the different concept of membership that is held among a new generation. You will have read in the materials accompanying the proposal of the previous General Council, if you were there, and this one, that this model has three kinds of, or at least three terms for membership. People can become a member of a community of faith with a threefold profession of faith, but they need not be baptized to become a member. This is a great difference between Model 2 and Model 1. People who become members are encouraged to become professing members. Only professing members can participate in courts of the church beyond the community of faith. So in order to be a member of the regional council, you must, or the denominational council, you must become a professing member. And it's up to each community of faith to decide what kind of membership people need to hold in order to serve on governing bodies. It is also possible to be an associate member, somewhat similar to an adherent now, and this would be open to people from other faith traditions, for instance, and indicate their support for the United Church and its positions. The profession of faith that's proposed in the study material that was distributed ask people to profess that they will, as a member, again, they need not be baptized to do so, follow Jesus by choosing to live a life of compassion, to live and act in hope for God's world, to grow in faith within this community of the United Church of Canada. And again, much of the how membership is shaped and how it is treated in the life of the community of faith is left in the hands of the local community of faith. What we need to do is to answer some questions that have come up about how we interpret membership and what membership means for us in the present day. What does it mean to be a member of the United Church of Canada? What does it mean for the Church when formal understandings of membership may create barriers rather than opportunities for ministry? Should membership be primarily about discipleship and faith, or about the governance of the Church? Is baptism necessary for membership and leadership in the Church? Is it possible for someone to be a member of the United Church without belonging to a congregation, or even holding memberships in more than one congregation? What about people who belong to emerging communities of faith, or to non-traditional, non-congregational settings, like community ministries, for instance? What happens to membership for those whose church closes and for whom no other United Church community is accessible? How do we deal in the United Church of Canada with a generational shift away from formal structures and therefore formal understandings of membership? Is membership a meaningful term today? These are the questions with which we need to grapple in our discussion groups as we examine these two models and seek to provide the Theology and Interchurch Interfaith Committee guidance with how we further develop our understandings of membership in this millennium. So I will entertain questions in the listening time here for clarification. So microphone 2.
Microphone 2. Ooh.
Eric Lucas from Montreal and Ottawa Conference. Dan, I wonder if you might help us understand the various disciplines that you might have considered to get to these two places. Did you consider just theology? Did you look at social psychology? How many different voices brought you to where you're at now?
Well, certainly, it being the Theology and Interchurch Interfaith Committee, theology gets considered in there. There's a lot of work done in sociology on current understandings of membership, as I said, not just in the church, but in other organizations in Western society, and as well as the work of religious studies broadly.
Microphone 3.
So Britt Earhart, Alberta Northwest Conference, I guess it's a continuation of the previous question, but there's a whole other set of language around membership and belonging that comes out of sacraments and covenant, and I'm wondering if you looked at, like I noticed we don't reference open table in this and membership, so I'm wondering if you looked at some of the alternative language around membership that's available to us through sacramental theology and covenant theology.
Certainly, sacramental theology has been one of the influences in looking at both models. There is in previous documents produced by the committee on this topic, there's an extensive discussion of the World Council of Churches Baptism, Eucharist and Ministry document, which underlies a lot of ecumenical understandings of the relationship between baptism and membership in the church and the sacraments of the church. And that is covered in detail there and was examined in detail by the working group of the committee, which has been looking at membership for the last 2 triennia. Triennia, is that the plural for triennium? There might be somebody who speaks Latin in the room who can correct me here. Further, I think microphone 1.
Sorry, friends. Moderator Brian Mee, Saskatchewan Conference. Dan, I wondered if you talked to our ecumenical partners, the ones that we're in full communion with, and how they handle questions of membership.
That'll certainly be something to explore in should the General Council direct us to either model. In full communion relationships, one of the marks of full communion is mutual recognition of membership, which will take into account differences in membership between the 2 denominations which are in full communion. So, and that goes a considerable way, but certainly as part of our commitment to our ecumenical partners, and in particular our full communion partners, any change in our understanding of membership will be discussed with our friends.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is the microphone 2?
I have the John O'Soren in Manitoba, northwestern Ontario. I would appreciate a little clarity about what specifically the link to the ecumenical partners is in both 1 and 2, because I think we are also, as a Christian church, to pass on the tradition from the early church to the modern church and so on. So I would appreciate the specific link in Model 1 and 2 to the past and the past tradition that's been handed on.
Well, thank you. I feel like the scene in Annie Hall where he says, I just happen to have Marshall McLuhan right here. I happen to have John Young right here. And between the 2 of us, we will answer your question.
So Model 1 is clearly congruent with our history. It's the way in which we have thought about and governed ourselves around membership since Union, and in fact reflects earlier understandings of our, certainly of our Presbyterian and Methodist past, and our congregational one as well. Model 2 breaks some new ground, certainly, in terms of a concept of congregational membership, but it would not be, it would break new ground for us. We will need to wrestle more in Model 2 with baptism. That was clear in the responses we received. But it would not, I mean, there are other Christian bodies who would hold some concept of membership which is not absolutely contingent on baptism in the way our current one was, and that we're present, in that sense, related to the Model 2.
As well, the Baptism Eucharist Ministry document of the World Council of Churches does allow for a considerable spectrum of time and discernment and discipleship between baptism and profession of faith. So it's something that we certainly should the General Council direct us to explore Model 2 further, would look at in, as I said, in detail.
Okay. Friends, I'm going to take the 2 more questions that are at the microphone because it's just about lunchtime and we want to know who we've elected. So microphone 2.
Alberta Northwest. I have a question for clarification. I see this as being, to a great deal, being about governance. And I'm wondering how each of these models would affect the way we make our decisions in our congregations, particularly in cases where there is a difficult decision or where conflict is involved. I'm a little concerned that with a more open membership, it might be possible for someone to just kind of bring in their friends for a few weeks and then they get to vote. I don't know.
So I'll remind you, friends, that we're not discussing the proposal now. We're just asking questions for clarification if there's something you don't understand. Microphone 2.
My question, I hope, is for clarification. Kathy Stewart-Savage from Hamilton Conference. In Model 2, would congregations then, before a meeting to discuss pastoral relations, or sorry, it's not pastoral relations, I'm thinking about when they decide to close a congregation and they bring in all the historical role people to vote against when they've never attended, would they then be able to say ahead of time, only people who have attended for the last 2 years or contributed or something like that?
The model allows for a considerable adaptation to local circumstances. So I'm sure there's lots of scenarios that local communities of faith would adapt to on their own.
Thank you. Friends, we have one very brief additional piece that we need to hear from on this theme before we'll move to the next thing.
So also included in this theme is Ticket to honoring the divine in each other, Hindu-United Church relations. Just a reminder that our statement on mending the world calls us to interfaith relationships as part of our identity. And so the church has been engaged and has been invited to be engaged in a statement on Hindu-United Church relations that we hope will move us towards a deeper theology of acceptance, respect, and transformation for the sake of the world we all inhabit. And what you have before you is a statement on Hindu-United Church relations that the General Council is invited to adopt and to commend to our communities of faith so that we can continue to encourage each other to build deeper relationships for the sake of justice and peace in our world. And I'll leave it there because I know we're...
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to invite the General Secretary up to give us the results of the election.
Voici maintenant le résultat de l'élection. Please welcome me, or welcome, please welcome, welcome me too. Please join me in welcoming the new moderator for the United Church of Canada, Richard Bott.
Friends, merci beaucoup. Megach, thank you so very, very much. And that's not just to all of you as a group, but specifically to the terrific 10, the other 9 nominees who walked with me in this journey, thank you for the gift of being there. Thank you for the ministry that we're doing in this place right now. And the only other words that I really have to say at the moment, other than, oh God, go like this. Christ within you, the hope of glory to come. Go into the world with a daring and a tender love, because the world needs it and we need it. Go in peace. And in all that you do, do it for love and by the power of the Holy Spirit. And remember this: the peace of Christ holds us, and the love of God enfolds us, and the wings of the Holy Spirit carry us this day and forevermore. Amen.
Amen.
So Richard, you have a big job ahead of you, and not in an easy time, but we're entrusting you with the work of right relations and carrying out the caretaker's call to action. And so we want to honor you and the church with the Men's Healing song.
I recognize the speaker at microphone 2.
Susan Beaver, All Native Circle Conference. I'm not standing alone, obviously. All 9 of us who began the journey together with Richard are standing here with Richard and for Richard. And I, on behalf of all of us, would like to move that the vote be made unanimous in support of Richard's leadership for moderator.
And I trust you have a seconder. I recognize Larry. Handheld mic.
Test. Thank you. Larry Doyle, Bay of Quinte Conference. I move that the ballot be for moderator to be destroyed. Thank you.
And seconded by Nora Sanders. We'll do a hand vote. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Those will be destroyed. All right, friends, please take your seat just for a moment before we go for lunch. What a blessed morning. Exactly. After lunch, you have your final time in your decision groups. You've got 2 back-to-back times. Basically, you've got the afternoon in your discussion groups. You're going to have to take a break partway through, just so you know, because you need that. You should, during this afternoon, get through all of the themes which you have left to discuss. So that should be your objective. As you do that, please always keep before you our call to holy manners, to be respectful of everybody in the room and even those who are not in the room, to be respectful with our words that we use, with the way we use our voice, with the amount that we use our voice, to ensure that everyone present is honored and that all voices are heard, and that we get through what needs to be gotten through. And now I am going to invite Etienne Lesage to offer us grace for our meal, and then we will go to lunch. So perhaps microphone 2.
Merci, Graham.
Oh, Etienne, sorry, I didn't know there were announcements. If you can pause, we'll have announcements, then Grace. Thank you.
Bien sûr.
Just quickly, this is an odd announcement perhaps. If you have a red Plymouth Sundance with Ontario license plates and you've parked that at the General Counsel office, you've probably been towed. And so you should check at impound if your car is missing when you get back there.
And I have one here that would be all the members of the Young Women's International who are here. Could you please meet today at 1 o'clock out here on the center platform, please, for a photo? And there's teachings in the lodge at 1:15 with Susan Beaver, and at 6:30 with Russell. And with Russell's, you can bring your dinner along. Okay, we go ahead.
And Etienne, as you offer grace, perhaps because we didn't have a chance to do this, you might also include a prayer for Susan Beaver. We've done that. We've offered a prayer for each of the nominees who was not elected. So we pray for Susan and our food. Thank you.
Okay, friends, we are hungry, but there is no shortage of blessings with God. So close your eyes, open your hands, fermez les yeux, ouvrez grand les bras et prions pour recevoir encore plus de bénédictions de notre Seigneur. Dieu créateur, Dieu nourricière, Dieu providence, Dieu abondance. Tu nous réunis ici et on se demande, mais qui va nous guider? Tu nous offres Richard et on te demande de le bénir alors qu'il se prépare très rapidement à quitter son nouveau rôle. Nous te demandons aussi de bénir et d'ouvrir de nouvelles portes sur le chemin de Suzanne, qui a été tellement brave d'accepter de répondre à ton appel pour servir ton Église. Nous savons que n'a pas terminé avec elle et que ce qu'elle vient de vivre va être très utile pour l'amener où elle doit se rendre avec toi et avec nous tous. Donne-lui de la joie, du repos et du réconfort et surprends-la. Tu es tellement bon là-dedans. Dieu, depuis la nuit des temps, tu nous amènes des leaders, tu nous offres de la nourriture, tu nous donnes un avenir plein d'espoir qui nous donne envie d'être curieux. Et parce qu'on est curieux, on t'en demande toujours un peu plus parce qu'on veut continuer avec toi. À l'instar de ton Fils Jésus qui nous a dit, comptez pas seulement sur Dieu, faites-le vous-même aussi. Les gens se sont présentés ici pour travailler avec toi. Les gens ont aussi travaillé beaucoup pour nourrir ceux qui travaillent fort ici. Alors nous te demandons d'accorder, de prononcer ta bénédiction sur la nourriture que nous allons consommer ensemble, ici à Oshawa, mais aussi à la maison, parce que ceux qui sont à la maison sont aussi des dirigeants de ton Église qui vont venir la changer. Alors au nom de Jésus, notre ami, notre guide et notre sauveur, nous te disons merci et nous acceptons ta bénédiction et tes surprises avec grâce. Puissions-nous être dignes dans la foule des émotions qui nous habitent aujourd'hui. Puissions-nous être dignes de recevoir tes surprises comme un vrai peuple rempli de ta gloire partout dans notre beau pays et avec nos partenaires globaux. Amen.
Amen. Merci. Bon appétit, folks. You're in your discussion groups as of 2 o'clock.
And for those of you who would like to be part of our choir, please meet over here. Now.